Every time a commercial aircraft weighing hundreds of tons touches the runway at a speed exceeding 150 miles per hour, an invisible market of $15 billion is activated in a matter of seconds. Have you ever sat by the window of an airplane and watched the moment the wheels touch the ground? That brutal impact, the thud, and the sudden deceleration represent the pinnacle of extreme engineering. What you might never have stopped to think about is that behind that single instant lies one of the most closed, complex, and lucrative industries on the entire planet. The global aircraft landing gear market is valued today at approximately $15 billion. And this is not a static figure, as the most recent data indicates that this value is expected to jump to $27 billion by around 2034. To put this into perspective, this growth means that with each passing year, additional billions of dollars are injected into a sector that most passengers do not even know exists. It is an economic empire that moves sums capable of changing the destiny of entire nations. But what makes this market truly fascinating is not just its billion-dollar size. It is the fact that it is controlled by an incredibly small number of global corporations. Although the world has hundreds of airlines and dozens of aircraft-producing nations, only a very small number of corporations possess the core technology necessary to manufacture this critical system. We are talking about a technological oligopoly that separates aerospace superpowers from the rest of the world in a definitive way. The landing gear industry is, silently, one of the most protected and strategically vital sectors of modern aviation. A complete landing gear set for a wide-body aircraft can weigh more than 30 tons and is composed of thousands of ultra-high-strength components. Each of these components must function with precision for decades, withstanding millions of impact cycles with zero tolerance for failure. The technology to create something like this is not available to just anyone, being the result of massive investments. In this documentary, you will discover how much money is really involved in this market, who the giants are that control it, and how money flows across the entire world. You will understand why this industry is the perfect example of how wealth is concentrated behind the scenes of global aviation. It is a journey through the invisible empire that sustains the sky. But before seeing the figures, understand the context that created this empire. To understand why this $15 billion market exists, you first need to understand the human and economic need it serves. Commercial aviation transports billions of passengers per year worldwide, connecting markets and families. Each of these passengers and every kilogram of cargo depends on a single critical moment: the safe landing. At every touch on the runway, all the impact force is absorbed by a mechanical system that costs millions of dollars and that must function perfectly. The global dependence on this market is absolute, and there is no modern aviation without high-performance landing gear. Hundreds of countries depend on aviation to keep their gross domestic products growing. The landing gear serves as a symbol of the technological gap between great powers and developing nations. When you understand this, you realize that the landing gear is not just a piece of metal, but a tool of economic sovereignty. The countries that hold this technology have a strategic advantage that goes far beyond immediate profit. They control the basic infrastructure of global transport, dictating safety norms and standards. The United States, France, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Canada are practically the only holders of this deep knowledge. This creates an almost insurmountable barrier to entry for new competitors, keeping capital circulating among the same players for decades. The number of people who earn money directly or indirectly from this market is impressive and spans several continents. From materials engineers to logistics specialists, the supply chain is vast and highly specialized. Every flight you observe in the sky sets in motion a financial gear that sustains families and governments. It is a network of mutual dependence where failure is not an acceptable option. Understanding the landing gear industry is understanding how the monopoly of knowledge transforms into a continuous flow of wealth. It is a lesson in how essential industries operate away from the eyes of the general public, but within the heart of the financial system. You now begin to perceive the real scale of this business. Now that you see why, let us go to the real numbers that shock. The specific numbers of this market reveal a scale that defies common intuition about aircraft components. The global market, valued at $15 billion in 2025, shows remarkable economic resilience. This value encompasses everything from the manufacture of new equipment to the vast network of maintenance and spare parts. Compared to the gross domestic product of many small countries, this sector alone moves more capital than entire national economies. The annual growth rate of approximately 5 to 7% ensures that the sector remains attractive for institutional capital. This growth is driven by the expansion of air fleets in Asia and the constant need for modernization in the West. It is projected that total revenue will reach $27 billion in less than 10 years. You are facing a sector that grows above the average of most traditional manufacturing industries. North America accounts for approximately $6 billion of this total market, consolidating its position as a leader in consumption and production. Europe follows closely, with France playing a central role through its aerospace incentive policies. These two economic blocs profit billions annually just from exporting this technology to the rest of the world. It is a constant transfer of wealth from operating nations to manufacturing nations. When we analyze the value per unit, the numbers become even more impressive for the attentive observer. A single landing system can represent a significant portion of the total cost of a new aircraft. Furthermore, the internal pressure of the tires, which can exceed 200 pounds per square inch, requires materials that only selected suppliers can produce. Every technical detail is, in fact, a revenue opportunity for the companies involved. This market does not suffer from the seasonal fluctuations that affect other retail or consumer technology sectors. As long as there are planes taking off and landing, there will be a need for component replacement and structural overhauls. It is a predictable and growing source of revenue that sustains the market value of large aerospace corporations. But who really controls this money? Let us go to the giants. The dominance of this market is concentrated in the hands of 5 main companies that dictate the pace of innovation and prices. Safran Landing Systems from France is the absolute leader, equipping more than 35,000 aircraft in more than 80 civil and military programs. Safran's revenue in this division is a central pillar of the French economy, guaranteeing thousands of high-skilled jobs. You have probably already flown in a plane sustained by their technology. Collins Aerospace, based in the United States, is the other great power that shares global leadership. As part of an even larger conglomerate, Collins uses its scale to dominate long-term government and commercial contracts. Heroux-Devtek, from Canada, although smaller in total size, is a specialist that holds critical contracts, including for elite military aircraft. These companies do not compete only on price, but on decades of proven reliability. Liebherr, from Germany, and Honeywell, from the United States, complete the group of 5 corporations that possess the core technology. Liebherr is recognized for its excellence in precision engineering, while Honeywell integrates the landing gear with advanced electronic systems. Together, these 5 entities form an economic hierarchy that is almost impossible to be challenged by new entrants. They hold the patents, the factories, and, above all, the trust of regulatory bodies. The strategy of these giants involves creating ecosystems where the customer remains linked to the brand for the entire useful life of the aircraft. By selling the original equipment, they guarantee decades of supply of exclusive parts and repair services. This business model is extremely lucrative and generates margins that are the envy of other industrial sectors. The control over the supply chain is total, from metal casting to monitoring software. You should notice that these companies operate with planning horizons of 20 or 30 years. They are not just concerned with the next quarter, but with the next generations of aircraft that are still on paper. This level of financial stability is what allows for continuous investment in research and development. The money does not stop there. See how it flows across the world. The flow of money in this industry follows a sophisticated path that divides the market into 2 main fronts. The first is the original equipment market, where aircraft manufacturers buy systems for new units. The second front, and often the most lucrative, is the aftermarket, which involves maintenance, repair, and overhaul. The aftermarket represents a significant and constant share of the sector's total revenue. The value chain begins with the extraction and processing of noble metals and special alloys that withstand extreme stresses. Money flows from fleet operators to maintenance shops, and finally, back to component manufacturers. There is an economic multiplier where every dollar invested in initial manufacturing generates several other dollars in services over 30 years. You are observing a very long-term financial cycle. Those who profit at each stage are the companies that hold the necessary safety certifications to touch the parts. Rigorous regulation acts as a filter that keeps money within a restricted circle of authorized companies. Even a commercial aircraft tire, which withstands more than 200 landings before replacement, is a recurring source of revenue. The financial flow is guaranteed by the legal necessity to maintain airworthiness. Investment in composite materials is also altering the flow of capital within the industry. Currently, composites represent approximately 14% of the market and grow at a rate of 14% per year. This means that money is migrating from traditional metallurgy to advanced chemistry and synthetic materials engineering. The companies leading this transition are capturing the largest shares of growth in the sector. You can see that money does not stay in a single country, but circulates globally between centers of excellence. However, most of this capital ends up returning to the headquarters of the 5 large corporations mentioned previously. It is a value drainage system that rewards technological dominance and intellectual property. But this flow creates jobs on a global scale. The social impact of this industry is measured by the creation of thousands of high-complexity and high-pay jobs. The aerospace industry, in general, pays salaries approximately 40% above the common industrial average. This occurs because the margin for error is non-existent, requiring professionals with years of training and specific certifications. You are looking at an elite of the global manufacturing workforce. There are direct jobs on assembly lines and indirect jobs throughout the network of smaller component suppliers. Billions of dollars in wages are paid annually, sustaining entire communities around aerospace hubs in France, Canada, and the United States. The impact on local economies is profound, as these workers have high purchasing power and financial stability. It is a gear of prosperity for those inside the system. The training of a technician specialized in landing gear can take years, which makes these professionals valuable assets for companies. Talent retention is a strategic priority, as the tacit knowledge of manufacturing cannot be easily replicated by machines. Even with the advancement of automation, the human touch in final inspection and stress testing remains indispensable. You perceive that human capital is as important as financial capital. In addition to manufacturing, the maintenance sector employs a vast network of mechanics at airports around the world. These professionals ensure that every landing is as safe as the first, performing daily checks under constant pressure. The invisible economy of the landing gear therefore sustains a global technical middle class that is essential for the functioning of modern commerce. The impact is real and measurable in every paycheck issued. This labor market is resilient to minor economic crises, as the maintenance of existing aircraft is mandatory by law, regardless of the sale of new planes. This offers job security that is rarely found in other sectors of heavy industry. The historical growth of this sector shows that the demand for these professionals only tends to increase. This growth is not recent. See the history behind it. The economic history of landing gear is a narrative of constant evolution and capital accumulation. Decades ago, the market was fragmented and technologies were much simpler, allowing more companies to compete. However, with the increase in aircraft size and safety requirements, the cost of development skyrocketed. This forced a consolidation that eliminated smaller competitors and created the current giants. The size of the market 30 years ago was only a fraction of the $15 billion we see today. The projected growth rate of 5 to 7% per year has been a historical constant, accompanying the democratization of air travel. Each new plane model launched on the market required a billion-dollar investment in new landing systems. You can trace the wealth of aerospace nations through the success of their landing gear. Emerging trends show that the sector is preparing for a new phase of aggressive expansion. The increase in air traffic in emerging markets such as India and Southeast Asia is creating an unprecedented demand for new equipment. The projections for 2034 are not just optimistic estimates, but based on real orders already recorded in the manufacturer's books. The past of solid growth is the best indicator of a prosperous future. Historically, the landing gear was one of the last parts of the aircraft to undergo radical design changes due to the necessary conservatism in safety items. However, economic pressure for lighter and more efficient planes has changed this scenario recently. The introduction of new metals and manufacturing processes allowed the sector to continue growing in added value. You are witnessing the maturation of a technological empire. The historical resilience of this market is proven by the fact that it has survived several global crises in the aviation sector. Even when airlines suffer, the landing infrastructure remains a necessary investment for public safety. The cash flow of landing gear manufacturers is one of the most stable in the entire aerospace supply chain. But the future depends on innovation. See, what is changing at the heart of this industry is the incessant search for efficiency through material science. Composite materials, as mentioned, are revolutionizing the weight of structures, allowing planes to carry more cargo or fuel. This technological transition requires massive investments in research and development, which only the 5 large companies can afford. You are seeing technology create new economic barriers. Smart sensors and structural health monitoring systems are transforming the landing gear into a digital device. Now, the system can warn when a part needs replacement even before it shows visible wear, optimizing maintenance costs. Automation in manufacturing is also reducing production time, although the cost of precision machinery remains prohibitive for new entrants. Innovation is the engine that keeps prices and margins high. Investment in research aims not only at performance but also at long-term economic sustainability. Electric landing systems, which eliminate the need for heavy hydraulics, are in advanced testing phases. If this technology becomes the standard, it will completely change the chain of fluid and hydraulic pump suppliers. You perceive that technological innovation is, in fact, a tool of creative destruction in the financial market. The digitalization of inventory and the use of three-dimensional printing for spare parts are also on the horizon. This can drastically reduce the cost of keeping parts stocked at remote airports, increasing the profitability of maintenance companies. However, the certification of these printed parts is still a regulatory challenge that protects original manufacturers. Technology and law walk together to protect the invisible empire. The future holds landing gears that are almost entirely autonomous in their diagnosis and operation. This evolution will ensure that the market continues to reach the projected $27 billion as each new technology adds a layer of value to the final product. The technical knowledge necessary to operate at this level is what guarantees the dominance of the current powers. Not everything is perfect. The risks are real. The economic risks of this sector are as large as its potential rewards. The fact that few companies control everything creates a systemic vulnerability in the global supply chain. If one of the 5 giants faces financial or quality problems, the entire global production of aircraft can be paralyzed. You must understand that market concentration is, at the same time, a strength and a dangerous weakness. Extreme regulation, while necessary for safety, represents a constant challenge for profitability. Any change in international norms may require companies to redesign entire components, costing hundreds of millions of dollars in new tests. Furthermore, disruption by new transport technologies, such as giant cargo drones, may change the demand for traditional landing gear. The risk of obsolescence, although slow, is a real concern for strategists. Volatility in the prices of raw materials, such as titanium and special steels, directly affects profit margins. As supply contracts are signed for many years, companies need to be masters in financial protection against material inflation. A geopolitical crisis in a metal-supplying country can destabilize production costs on another continent. You perceive that this market is deeply connected to global political stability. Another challenge is the shortage of qualified labor, as younger generations do not always seek careers in heavy manufacturing. Without new engineers and technicians, the cost of labor tends to rise, pressing the final prices of equipment. Automation tries to fill this gap, but the implementation cost is a financial risk in itself. The industry lives in a delicate balance between mechanical tradition and digital innovation. Despite these challenges, the barrier to entry continues to protect the profits of established companies. The risk of a new competitor appearing out of nowhere is practically zero, given the capital and time required for certification. However, for those already inside, risk management is a daily activity that consumes a large part of the board's resources. But where there is risk, there is investment opportunity. For you seeking investment opportunities, the landing gear market offers a rare stability in times of uncertainty. The aftermarket sector is the crown jewel for investors, as it generates constant cash flow regardless of the sale of new planes. As the global fleet ages, the need for maintenance only increases, guaranteeing profits for certified companies. It is a business model based on mandatory recurrence. Emerging markets represent the largest growth frontier for the coming decades. Countries that are expanding their airport infrastructure will need local maintenance services and parts stocks. Companies that manage to establish strategic partnerships in these regions will be better positioned to capture the growth of air traffic. You should observe where new air routes are being opened to identify the flow of money. The best positioned companies are those leading the transition to composite materials and digital systems. Safran and Collins Aerospace remain the most solid bets due to their scale and diversification. However, smaller companies that dominate specific niches of sensor technology can also be lucrative acquisition targets. The sector is ripe for a new wave of mergers and acquisitions that can increase share value. Investment in sustainability is also opening doors for new green capital flows. Landing gears that help reduce fuel consumption through lower weight are highly valued by airlines seeking zero-emission goals. There is an economic premium for efficiency that investors are starting to price now. You are facing an industry that is reinventing itself for the 21st century. In summary, the opportunities are at the intersection of mandatory safety and technological innovation. It is a sector for those who have patience and seek solid returns based on real fundamentals of the industrial economy. The invisibility of this market is, in fact, its greatest protection against the irrational volatility of the mass market. Now that you see the opportunities, reflect on the personal impact. Why does all this matter to you beyond the numbers and the billion-dollar figures? It matters because the invisible economy of the landing gear is what allows your freedom of movement and the safety of your family on every trip. It affects the price of the tickets you buy, the profitability of the pension funds where you invest, and the national security of your country. It is a reminder that the modern world is sustained by pillars that we rarely notice. The landing gear industry is a testament to the human capacity to master the brute forces of nature through intelligence and capital. It shows that true wealth is not just in what is digital or virtual, but in physical mastery over matter and gravity. By understanding this invisible empire, you begin to look at the world with greater depth, recognizing the value of technical work and precision. This reflection is timeless because regardless of the propulsion technology of the future, contact with the ground will always be the moment of truth for any vehicle. The economy of safety and reliability will never go out of style. You live in a system where invisible excellence is what guarantees the visible normality of your daily life. Valuing this complexity is the first step toward a superior economic consciousness. The next time you hear the sound of the landing gear being retracted after takeoff, you will know that there is a multi-million-dollar investment working for you. You will know that thousands of people around the world dedicated their lives so that that mechanism functions without failure. This connection between the individual and the large industry is what moves civilization. The invisible economy is around you, all the time. We conclude this analysis with the certainty that knowledge is the most valuable asset you can possess. Understanding the backstage of economic power puts you in a position of advantage in any discussion or financial decision. The landing gear empire is just one of the many stories that make up the mosaic of our global economy. To conclude, a call you cannot ignore. If this dive into the invisible empire of landing gear has piqued your curiosity, you are in the right place. The FactoryMade channel was created to reveal the economic gears that most people ignore, but that define the world's wealth. What impressed you the most on this journey? Was it the $15 billion market or the fact that only 5 companies control everything? Write your opinion in the comments as you help build our next documentary. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss any of our economic investigations. Every video we produce is designed to give you a privileged view of how money and technology really work behind the scenes. If you know someone interested in aviation, economics, or big business, share this content and help expand this conversation. Your participation is fundamental so that we can continue researching real data and bringing stories that no one else tells. What other invisible industry would you like to see explored here? Leave your suggestion as we read each one carefully. Your engagement is the fuel that keeps our production at high speed, always seeking the truth behind the numbers. We thank you for taking the time to understand a little more about the complexity of our industrial world. We hope that, from today on, every landing you experience has a much deeper and richer meaning. Knowledge transforms perception, and perception transforms reality. Stay with us in this incessant search for what is made in factories and offices of power. Stay tuned for our next release, where we will explore another billion-dollar sector that operates silently under our feet or over our heads. The world is vast and economic stories are infinite for those who know where to look. You are now part of a select group that sees beyond the obvious. See you in the next video on FactoryMade.